clouds on fire, the air is sharp. Voices rising, breaking the dark. Hearts thump faster like a drum. The night's alive, here it comes. We got the results, the dice is cast. Feel the pull of the future past. Cheer or cry, the moment's here. History's loud, it's crystal clear. Lights are flashing, the screens are tall. Waves of hope crash through the hall. Win or lose, the story grows. Every step the nation shows. We got the results, the dice is cast. Feel the pull of the future past. Cheer or cry, the moment's here. History's loud, it's crystal clear. Lights are flashing, the screens are tall. Waves of hope crash through the hall. Win or lose, the story grows. Every step the nation shows. We got the results, the dice is cast. Feel the pull of a future past. Cheer or cry, the moment's here. History's loud, it's crystal clear. Let's go clear. Let's go clear. Some will sigh, some will shout. Voices tangle in the doubt. But through the noise, the truth will soar.
Kia ora koutou. Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Order Paper. Tonight we are covering vote regulations, something like that, with, of course, David Seymour, so I hope you've got your popcorn ready. Tonight we've got both Sam and Gary Tiles joining us. How are you guys doing?
Oh, it's been a fun day. 90 minutes ago, a bit more than 90 minutes ago, about 120 minutes ago, I was within stone's throw of Gary's house.
And I'm mentally prepared for some David Seymour, so let's go.
Well,
Yeah.
at least someone is. How does it feel to be taking the back seat tonight, Sam?
Well, I didn't even know if I was going to get to the back seat
Well, this is a good point.
because I didn't know what time I was going to be back in Wellington.
Absolutely fair. Okay, well, without any further ado, let's get going. Enjoy. Push and play could help.
After the relatively brief opening statement from the Minister. Just giving the Minister, certainly. All right, so no, welcome.
No, well, look, thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here on behalf of the small but mighty Ministry for Regulation. I understand it is the third smallest ministry in the government by numbers, certainly the smallest of the central agencies, and yet it has a very important job. If you look at the activities of government, all of it can ultimately be divided down into just two activities. One is taxing citizens' money and applying it to purposes it deems appropriate for the public good, and the other is placing restrictions on the use and exchange of the private property that it has not already expropriated through the process of taxing and spending. When it comes to taxing and spending, as evidenced by this committee and the annual review process we're going through, I think we have very good oversight of what government taxes money for, how it applies to spending and what sort of results it gets. And while we can all have different views and disagree about whether particular expenditures or taxes are appropriate, we're at least informed in how we do so. When it comes to the restrictions that government places on the use and exchange of property through various regulations and laws and so on, I don't believe that we have had the level of transparency or scrutiny that we need. And as a result, excessive regulation has led to a number of costs on New Zealanders. One is the immediate cost of compliance and administration for activities that go ahead. Another is the opportunity cost of activities that do not occur because people are afraid of that first type of cost. But the third is a more profound type of cost, which is the gradual erosion of our pioneering spirit as people see organisations that are gradually driven back and discouraged from taking risks and making the most of opportunities, decide that actually maybe it's just not worth giving it another go. Those three costs, I believe, are very serious for our country, and that's why I believe that the Ministry for Regulation, its Minister at this time, me, and the Regulatory Standards Bill form an important parallel to the infrastructure government has around monitoring, taxing and spending. That is a Minister of Finance, Treasury and a Public Finance Act. This means that ultimately voters find themselves better informed and better able to judge whether those elected in government are doing a good job to ensure that the rules put in place, the restrictions on the use and exchange of property, actually are made in the public interest, the least cost and best way for those restrictions to be made, and that we genuinely do have the best public policy in the world so that people can live longer, happier and healthier lives. I also want to quickly introduce two people I know have appeared before the committee, even I think this week, Gráinne Moss, the Chief Executive, and Andrew, Chief Legal Advisor. I'm very proud of the very high quality people who have stepped up to become employees of the Ministry for Regulation in its initial year. And today we're going to talk about some of the very real differences that having a Ministry for Regulation has made for New Zealanders, even in the less than 1 year that it has had an actually fully funded fiscal year under the budget. So thank you very much for those that have listened politely, and I look forward to answering further questions.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. You gave in good faith that you're going to give some leeway to the opposition, and before the Minister had finished, we heard a rather unparliamentary outburst from Dr. Deborah Russell. I just wonder if that's the standard that we're going to expect before the questions have even started.
Well, no, the opposition give me the undertaking that that disorderly will not break out, and if it does, then we'll have to revert to standing orders and speaking rule. I'm sure we won't, but fair point.
I'm sorry, what was the unparliamentary outburst? Or Deborah Russell
Something I should have kept under my breath.
Well, just tell people would like
I
to know.
believe I said, for fuck's sakes, in response to something. It was unparliamentary and I shouldn't have said it.
Well, that's the standard of the Labor Party. They're swearing already.
So, Dr. Russell, you've withdrawn and apologised for that comment?
I have.
Okay. Let's move on. Dr. Duncan Webb.
Kia ora, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister. And I'm interested in your in running the kind of ruler, your own ruler of costs and benefits over the ministry itself. But it's had 17 million this year, 18 million next year, rising to 22 million in total. Internationally, that's a lot of money to spend on this function. Office of Best Practice Regulation in Australia has a $5 million budget. Even the United States Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, which does exactly the same role, central oversight of federal regulations, cost-benefit analysis and regulatory reviews, has between 12 and 15 million US for a federal government. I'm just perplexed as to why we can't do things a little more efficiently here in New Zealand.
Well, I suspect it's that they haven't delivered the level of benefits that the Ministry for Regulation has delivered, even in the short time that it's existed. I mean, I'll give you one example. We have had modelled the potential impacts of the agricultural and horticultural sector review. If it was to halve the time taken to consent new products, then the net present value, of faster consenting to the New Zealand economy would be 272 million. So you go through it, I mean, 16, 18, 20, 22, you've got an average of 19 million. That one sector review, which is one of 4 done each year, sector reviews being about a third of the ministry's overall job, will pay for the ministry for the next,
Well, that's not the question,
10
right?
years.
My question was a comparative question, and it was look overseas and see comparator institutions. Now, have you looked overseas? Are you benchmarking yourself against overseas institutions? I'll get to the agricultural review later, but are you benchmarking yourselves on international performance measures?
Well, you need a comparison to what benefits those other institutions have delivered. If you're prepared to supply that, then we can have a conversation. But so far as I'm aware, that data's not available.
So you're not looking overseas, and the Chief Executive might want to respond, but if you're not, what I've got so far is you're not looking overseas to see what your overseas comparators are doing and how they're doing it and how they're doing it for about a quarter of the price.
Well, actually, the point is that they're not doing it. What they're doing is quite different, and they're not achieving the same benefits that we are. Therefore, we don't believe that the comparison is valid.
Well, in terms of the benefits you are achieving, I want to get to the regulatory reviews later, but in terms of improving the quality of material going through the house, there's been no tangible benefit that I can see. And in fact, if you look at the quality of regulatory impact statements, including the quality of regulatory impact statements coming from ministries with ACT members, they're falling woefully short. Gun reform, treaty principles, pay equity. Where are the reports from the Ministry for Regulation on those regulatory impact statements?
Well, the view I take is that the regulatory impact statements have not been performing for quite some time. There is a plan in place to improve those, and it goes like this. We are adopting new policy as a government under the Regulatory Standards Bill, that we will have a new set of criteria or principles against which...
Well, hang on. The mission of the department started a year ago. I mean, you said yourself that in respect of pay equity, you didn't need to consult on it. Now, that's a total contravention of your own principles. Surely you don't think it appropriate that we don't consult on things that don't involve private property?
I beg your pardon?
Well, you said in the media that it was unnecessary to consult on pay equity because it didn't affect private property rights.
No, I've never said that.
On Gráinne, you said, when asked why you didn't consult, you said it didn't interfere with the free use and exchange of property.
No, I haven't said that. What I have said is that we are reducing the restrictions on people's use and exchange of property. The purpose of the Ministry for Regulation is to ensure that if the government is going to place new or greater restrictions on people's freedom, then those should be justified. However, if we are reducing the number of restrictions on people's freedom,
have we seen
then
no
that
improvement?
requires less justification.
Why have we seen no improvement in regulatory quality, notwithstanding your ministry's been in place for in excess of a year?
Well, as I explained in my answer to your initial question, there is a process in place. Passing the Regulatory Standards Bill is critical to that. That is well underway, and I understand the committee is going to have a good opportunity.
So for $17 million, we've got nothing.
Well, no, because as I answered in one of your previous questions, we've already begun a process of regulatory sector reviews, which have already saved New Zealand far more money than the ministry has cost by a large factor.
Okay, I'm going to go to...
Well, excuse me, Mr. Chair. If somebody gives an answer, they should be taken at their word. Now, we've already had one Labor member swearing. We've now got another one who asked a question and then says, oh, that's moot in response to an answer. I think we need to operate in a bit of better faith on this committee.
No, I'm sorry, but I will respond to that. I do want to ask questions around that because it's very much up in the air as to what the benefits from your agricultural review are and the quality of the analysis that underpinned it. Let's get to that later.
Well, you're welcome to ask questions, but
Yes,
there's
and
no
I'll
point.
ask them in a themed manner. So
There's no point in asking questions
that's good.
if you just criticise the answer as being dishonest or misleading.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Not dishonest.
Dr. Webb's had 8 questions is what I've counted so far, so that's sustained questioning for you. Francisco Hernandez.
Oh my gosh.
What the fuck? Sorry, I've just said exactly what Deborah Russell said.
I think we all are. No, absolutely. What the fuck? What is the point in asking questions if you cannot ask for clarity on the answer?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's because Duncan was not asking talking points as the role of the opposition.
Yeah. Hans, you are absolutely correct.
Well, so far, the two things I picked up from David Seymour is he's obsessed with costs, but it's only costs to people that support him. And
now, here's the interesting part.
He talks about people's freedom when he's actually trying to get corporate freedom.
Yeah.
He's not representing people's freedom at all.
And for those who are wondering, that familiar face there, Gráinne Moss is the CEO of the Ministry of Regulations, who is the former chief executive of Oranga Tamariki, who left under a shadow of the cloud when Tracy Martin was the Minister for Children. So just wondering, Gráinne Moss has not exactly disappeared, but boy, how the hell did she end up in that?
Yep, and I think we've seen how David Seymour is going to react to questioning, the way he's going to be
As Laura said, get your
Not even
popcorn out.
another question.
Yeah, I don't understand how Seymour can keep saying that they are invalid questions, and he is trying to answer questions that haven't been asked. Also, I'm really glad that we have not turned this into a drinking game, because I'd be fucked already with the amount of times that he has said in the middle of a sentence.
And I can't have a hangover because I've got to be at Kandala School at 6:30 tomorrow morning.
Yeah, no bugger that.
Yeah.
The other thing is, Seymour never talks about the costs to people.
No.
He's talking about costs. He never talks about how regulation, it's called red tape because a lot of it was actually bought with the blood of workers.
Yeah, well, no, because we know his stance. Bugger the people.
Yep.
Well,
But
just
then
like
he
Ron
has-
Van Velden sat there and said, we overblew the cost of a life. Well, I remember Fred McDonald used to frequently sit there and say the average, the cost of a person's loss of a life was weighted between $1 and $3 million, according to Waka Kotahi, when it came to things in there. And he used to keep bringing up examples of, hey, you don't even, before you even had a person dead, you could sit there and pay for this project. And these were like basic little things like street lights and dark areas and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's the exact same thing they're doing with this new war on road cones.
Oh, exactly. Like, what's with the what are we going to suddenly have? Oh, sorry, you can only have them spaced 5 meters apart instead of 1.
Yeah, I'm sorry. How does that keep our road crews safe? I have a lot of family and extended family working in roadworks.
Yeah. Well, David Seymour and Brooke Van Velden wouldn't mind if they sat there and got ran over.
Those family members have been on site when a car has driven through the cones and killed their co-worker. And yet, oh no, there's too many road cones.
Oh, God.
I'm sorry that people's safety is not important to you anymore, National.
No. People's safety is too expensive, is what he's saying.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. And here's the other thing is, what happens if, say, they dumb down the regulations and then the road worker companies go, screw you, David Seymour. We're going to continue doing it what it is. Is David Seymour and Brooke Van Velden going to turn up there with their checkbook? Excuse me, road workers. Now, you are allowed to make things safer, but I'm going to tell you you're not. So now please sit there and do it, or I'm going to sit down there and penalise you, because I don't believe in free autonomy.
And I'm not sure if he's trying to say that the use of road cones is too expensive when it's the roading company that pays for and owns said road cones, not the government.
I do know there is a leasing cost to sit down there and for per road cones for them to be out there in the combination of what's happening. But the fact itself, it's like there is a cost in it, but the cost is minuscule. Like, put it this way, the person holding the stop-go sign or pressing the button of the traffic light costs more money than the road cones on the road.
Yeah.
You're paying those people $30 an hour to sit there and hold that sign, whereas
you
you're
don't
paying
have to pay road cones an hourly wage.
Well, apparently there's a rental rate of $4 a day.
Meanwhile, Duncan is asking why it is that our Ministry of Regulation is more expensive than the one for the United States.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
because
but something
they do
really
different
simple.
things.
And he's not. And David Seymour's not even answering the question.
No, exactly.
Should we move on to see? Was it Francisco's questions,
Yes.
Madam Chair?
That's an odd feeling title, but yes, let's do that. I was about to say the same thing.
Well, you
Thank
are
you, Mr. Chair. I want
technically
to
a
start off
co-chair of It's in the
primarily
Ballot
with a question
Productions.
I know.
Dr. Duncan Webb asked, which was around the budget for the Ministry for Regulation. Now, the briefing we've just had from the OAG says that the Ministry for Regulation
I'm sorry, from the...
Office of Auditor General.
Oh, sorry, yes.
suggests that says that the Ministry for Regulation overspent its budget by 0.9 million. What is the level of financial control in this ministry?
Well, if you think about that, even if we take that as being true.
But it was budgeted at 16 million last year and it spent 16.9 million. How is it not true?
Well, let's take it as true.
Yes.
So we're doing that. And then we say, okay, you've got a startup ministry that is transferring money between different financial years, but actually remaining well within its budget over the 4-year period, and has managed to stay within, well, help me, about 5.5% in its first year, which we made up in its second year. So I would say that's quite normal in any organisation's budgeting, and it shows very tight control in answer to your question.
Isn't part of the reason why it stayed within its budget is that it's essentially being guaranteed funding increases year on year without having to be subject through the same baseline savings targets that other ministries have had to be subject to?
Well, of course, it couldn't be subject to a baseline savings target because that would require it to have had a baseline in previous years. As a new ministry, it doesn't have a baseline to compare itself with. The second point is, yes, it does have each year for its first 4 years a $2 million increment. As it establishes itself, it finds the staff. We could have, of course, started at 22 million, which will be its final budget, but we've chosen to start it at a lower level to recognise the fact that it takes time to grow its capability. For example, it spent its first year working on material which will be used to train others throughout the public sector to be better regulators, because often people say, well, it's not so much the rules we care about, it's the way they're applied. However, that's taken some time to prepare. In future years, there might be more scope to use those resources to better educate other regulators. So we've actually chosen to start lower than where we're going to end up, increment over time as we grow our capability to do good.
So are you guaranteeing then that the overall cap for the Ministry for Regulation in terms of what its final budget will be 22 million? It won't go over that.
No, that's for the first 4 years.
Government expect it to grow beyond 22 million?
No, I don't have. You asked if I can guarantee it. I said no. I don't have any expectation, for the simple reason that future governments will set budgets, and they might budget more or they might budget less. There's no reason to think that it would be more. There's no reason to think it would be less. But it would be unfair to ask me to guarantee what a government might do in 4 years' time.
Okay, I just want to remind members that the briefings that we get from the Office of Auditor General are in confidence, and while you may be able to draw themes from them, it's the rule is that we don't quote directly from them as such. Now I'm going to go to Dr. Megan Woods. No, you're right.
Dr. Webb.
Okay.
Gee, this chair likes to interject a lot.
He does. But I mean, that is a very good point to bring up, is that like that's not supposed to be public knowledge. Like that's for in-house only. You know, the general Tom, Dick and Harry aren't supposed to know what they're saying.
I think there are other ways to refer to it without quoting from it. That was the problem. Or that might be the problem.
Yeah. I was...
Detective Rogers, if you want to be a panelist, you're welcome to join us tomorrow night. Sorry, I just had to say that.
Yeah, I was going to say Seymour is as good at skirting the question as Louise was at last night.
Maybe that's a feature of this government.
Well,
it's what Luxon tries to do, but he's not very good at it.
So true.
But yeah.
No, it's just that Seymour's much more skilled at doing that thing and not making it look like he's doing it, if you know what I mean.
He is, and that's because the Atlas organisation teaches you how to do that.
Whereas Luxon probably wasn't trained by Atlas.
Yeah, well, you know, Seymour's dangerously convincing in a way that Luxon can only dream of.
Yeah. All right. Oh no, it looks like we're jumping questioner. So let's see what happens here.
Okay, well, I might just, before you go, Duncan, I might just jump over this side to Todd Stevenson or Dan Bidwell.
Todd first.
Oh, good.
Okay, Todd, then we'll come back to Dr. Webb.
Good morning. Thanks for being here, Minister. Obviously, we've already touched a little bit on these regulatory system reviews. You said it's about a third of the ministry's work. At the moment, there's, I think, around 6 criteria that are kind of looked at when deciding on these system reviews. Things like productivity and regulatory burden, economic opportunities, social outcomes, etc. Can you tell me what you've learnt in the reviews that have happened to date, and will those criteria and framework be adjusted, and how is that informing the thinking of the ministry for the next set of reviews?
Well, I think there's a couple of things here. First of all, a lot of the changes that have been made, I don't believe would be made if the regulated party had to tell the regulator. Because often the regulator is in quite a position of power over the regulated party. I give the example of early childhood centres. I happen to be the minister responsible for that regulator, and I can tell you that we've had to really work hard on ensuring that the regulator operates well and leaves the regulated party, the early childhood centre, in a comfortable position. Nonetheless, I believe in a lot of cases, the centres and the regulated parties would not have raised the concerns for fear of the regulator, and I suspect that that's just a problem right across the regulatory environment. You could say the same thing about just about any regulator. So being someone that the regulated parties can go to means that there is now an advocate for the regulated within government, and you won't get that from the people who are regulating them. That's a conflict of interest. The criteria that we've used so far, I think, have been very sound, and we'll continue to use the same criteria for the foreseeable future. As you say, we're interested in how big is the impact on the rest of the New Zealand economy, how big is the impact of regulation on that sector, and how plausible is it that we can make improvements that will show a tangible benefit. And so at some levels, you will see, for example, the hairdressing review, actually quite a significant sector. Are they badly over-regulated? I don't believe that they were. However, counterbalancing that, we were quite easily able to remove regulatory burden and make a difference quite quickly. So that is a success for that sector, and one where, for minimal effort, we have made sure that $1 million a year will be saved in fees alone, and probably a greater amount in the inconvenience of compliance. That means that sector review will basically pay for itself every year into the future. And it's a very good example of how this small but mighty ministry is one that is actually saving people money every year.
Okay, we just had one sup there from Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you. I'm interested in the regulatory review process. Is it something you have input in as a minister, or is it something that the agency itself decides?
As a minister, I take recommendations from the ministry as to what sort of sectors we should consider, and I have some influence over that decision. I would describe it as a joint decision.
So would you say you have final sign-off on what the work program is for the regulatory reviews that are undertaken?
I wouldn't say that. It's a collaborative process. The ministry obviously gives me a lot of advice, and I take it very seriously. I guess in theory I can just override things, but I think as a minister that's unwise. Usually the people that are working full-time on a project will have very useful things to say, and you're wise to listen to them.
Okay, I'm going to go to a sup here from Ryan Hamilton.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Minister. With regard to your framework around early childhood education, the review you've done, that's alluded to the $1 million of saving, and obviously that compounds over time. That review wasn't without some noise from the sector, but what are the key, benefits or extrapolates you've pulled from that review, not just financially, direct and indirect, but some of the other wider benefits you think have come from the benefit of this intervention?
So you're talking specifically about early childhood? Yeah. So if I was to just start with a general theme, I believe one of the reasons we have a problem with productivity in New Zealand is that we spend too much time on what might be called transactional activity, not enough time on what you might call transformational activity. It's the builder who takes longer to get consent than actually build the thing, and it's the early childhood centre operator who says, look, all I wanted to do was release the magic of young New Zealanders, and actually I spend far too much time on compliance activity, and in some cases too much time fearing the regulator. So what we've been able to do is shift them, or will do as this review is implemented, is shift them away from unnecessary compliance activity back towards more productive activity, actually unleashing the magic of young minds in this country. Now, how does that work? Well, there's basically three things. First of all, the rules. We found that there were 98 licensing requirements. By the time we're finished, a significant portion of those will be either gone, simplified, or transformed to guidance. Second is the way that the regulation is done. For too long, it's been very high stakes. If you miss any of these criteria, you can be shut down, when in many cases it'd be more appropriate to have a system, and it'll be a 5-step system of, well, here's a warning, here's a more serious warning, and eventually we will shut them down. If it's something very serious involving the safety of a child, we can still shut them down immediately. But a much more graduated and proportional response, and there'll also be some changes within the regulator to make them, more accountable and appropriate too. So it's what are the rules, how do we enforce them, and what's the structure of the organisation enforcing them? All of those will change and give us a much more constructive relation between the regulator and the regulated, prioritising child safety while also making early childhood centres a much happier place to work.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go back to...
Thanks. I'm going to keep looking at how...
No, hold on. Right. No, this is making me fucking mad. I have worked.
Well, you used to work in
sector.
early childhood.
I have worked in the ECE sector. Yes, I have seen the horror stories in the news. Children being made to sleep in drawers, children being locked in rooms because they were disturbing the other kids. Children being burnt because they're allowed into the fucking kitchen while they're cooking lunch.
Well, we could talk about this. So today I was at Tui Park Kindergarten delivering the fruit this morning as part of the runs, and one of the kids, and I swear it's the second time he's done this, jumps on the front of my fold-out trolley when it's empty on its way out and wants, to get a ride. Now, he don't get that far with the ride, but it's the second time it's been done. Now, will the Ministry of Regulations and the process that he's talking about, will it hinder or harm me if this child starts trying to do that?
See, I don't think that should be on you, though. That should be on the childcare centre.
Yeah.
Because that means that their staff are not paying proper attention to what the kids are doing.
Yeah, I've got to admit, the kid at least does it when it's not moving. He kind of cutely does it and looks at me and go you going to move now?
Okay, that is adorable, but yes,
Yeah.
it is not necessarily safe.
Yeah.
Children can be adorable and stupid at the same time.
So true.
There seems to be, David Seymour is 100% focused on reducing compliance costs for the people who are making profit from this industry, while he's got absolutely no care about the safety or benefits to the children.
Yeah.
It's made my blood.
The machine that delivers profit for him.
Yeah.
The user.
Kiwi Scoot's just posted, that's made my blood boil.
Yeah.
Because I know that's happened to one of my friend's children because of the autism.
Oh.
Miramar Central Primary School.
Wow.
And I mean, it's quite a few years ago now, considering, this kid's now nearly 18. But
right.
I mean, and this has happened before I met her, but it's just
yeah.
But it was an issue that it made Campbell live back in the day, considering John Campbell was on Channel 3.
All of the regulations they complain about came about because someone was doing something unacceptable and getting away with it. Every regulation has been because someone's been harmed.
Yes. Regulations in any industry are to keep people safe.
Should be.
To keep the business running if something should go wrong.
To also set standards for liability for insurance companies to assess for premiums.
Exactly.
If you don't have regulations, it becomes a bit airy-fairy.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
So
and we've got another Madam Chair. Well, do we call you Madam Chair?
You can call me whatever you want.
Except for late for dinner.
No, I had dinner early tonight.
See, told you. Can't call you late for dinner.
I've just finished up with boxing, so it's okay. And then I had dinner, and now I'm here.
Oh, nice. So when I was working in the ECE sector, I was I was covering maternity leave for one of the teachers. I was going to go through and do all the training through Porsche and all of that sort of stuff, but then I realized that it wasn't what I really wanted to be doing with my life, so I didn't continue after I left that position. But the first week or so that I was there, I'd been police vetted and all of that sort of thing, and that's how I was allowed to work there in the first place. If I hadn't been vetted, I wouldn't have been allowed to work there. But in the first week or so, one of the very small children, because we had kids from, I think, a year, up to 5. One of them had messed in their diaper, putting it nicely. And I said to the head teacher, do you want me to take her in and change her? And they said, I love that that's your first instinct, but you're not actually verified to be allowed to do that. So absolutely not a problem. I totally understand. I will find someone who is allowed. You know, it is, these regulations are to protect our kids. You're the future of our country. And he wants to go and gut the fucking regulations protecting them and their carers?
You probably
the
would sit down there and support.
regulations protect the children and the workers.
Yes.
Those are he wants to actually remove regulations that are standing in the way of the owners making profit.
You probably would have Tim Jargo changing kids' nappies if he had his way. Just put that into context.
Speechless.
Right. Anyway, let's
continue.
What else he's got to say on the matter?
Yes.
The regulatory reviews are selected because, you know, you've got one that you did in agricultural chemicals and you've got a clear connection with the agricultural sector through lobby groups there and through your own members. And then another one's ECU. You've got a clear connection to a one-time funder of the ACT Party and certainly supporter of right-wing narratives, right, in the Right Family Foundation. So there's a real concern that it looks like there's an appearance of regulatory reviews being chosen to benefit parties connected politically, right? How can we have confidence that the decisions are not politically influenced and are made entirely on the basis of where best wins and values for New Zealanders are?
Well, first of all, the idea that I've got a clear connection. I'm the most urban MP in New Zealand. My main interaction with the dairy industry is probably through a flat white. And when I go and visit...
Well, one of your members was chair of Federated Farmers.
When I go and visit farm animals, it's usually the sheep in Cornwall Park. So the idea that I've got some sort of clear connection, I've got no more or less connection with rural New Zealand than anyone else. Now, you're right. I represent a party that has very good policies for rural New Zealand and is very popular with New Zealand, rural New Zealand. That is true, and I'm sure that that hasn't escaped your attention. But frankly, the suggestion that I have any kind of conflict is completely improper. Secondly, the idea that we decided to do a review of the early childhood sector because someone may or may not, I'm not even sure, have donated to the ACT Party a long time ago is frankly fatuous. And well, I'll tell you why we did do a sector review into early childhood, because it's a large and economically significant sector, because it's a sector.
How can New Zealanders be confident that the sector reviews are chosen on the basis of best value for New Zealanders and not for political wins? Now, what I put to you is that you should have no part to play, that there should be no collaboration, and that should be a decision entirely within the ministry, because that's where you've got the expertise built up. And for you to then go and cherry pick, and I mean, is it the case that the agricultural chemical reviews was suggested by you?
So actually the agriculture and chemical was actually suggested initially by us, because the primary industry, us as the Ministry for Regulation, I mean, primary industries is basically the backbone of New Zealand's trade. So it was one of the first areas that we looked at. So we actually brought it to the Minister first.
Well, okay, and thank you for that contribution. I guess then perhaps you could explain to us within the ministry how this process happens, because I am concerned. And if you could go through and I've seen your list of considerations, but what I want to hear is that there is no risk of political interference in the selection of review areas.
Okay, let the Minister respond.
Yeah, I think first of all, we really have to address this. the suggestion that there is some sort of improper interest is completely wrong. It's unparliamentary for the member to suggest
It's
it.
entirely within orders for me to talk about influence.
No, it's not. If you are suggesting that there's an improper influence in decision making, that is unparliamentary. The member's been a member of Parliament for a long time. He should have read the standing orders. But I can be absolutely clear that there is a very robust process for choosing sector reviews. In this instance, as we've just heard, this suggestion was from the ministry itself. And when it comes to the idea that an elected minister should not be involved in decision making in government, well, that is just undemocratic. Of course, people have a right to be elected to Parliament, to become ministers and to make decisions. And it's not actually their right, it's the right of the New Zealand people to elect us to do so. If you seriously believe that that whole process doesn't work and that we should be governed by the unelected, then there's a few countries that you might find more comfortable. I won't name them now, but I'm sure you can guess.
Okay, we're going to go to Dan Bidwell.
Hey, thank you, Mr.
Hold on.
What is he trying to? Is he trying to sit there and try to go? Well, if you don't like elected people making decisions, you could always go to a dictatorship country where unelected people sit there and rule you, like North Korea or something, or maybe the United States of America at the moment.
Well, yeah, I mean, let me be blunt about this, right? This is a guy who has no experience in the rural sector. Okay, I don't want to be governed by him. There you go. I'm a libertarian. I live in a rural community. I don't want to be governed by David Seymour's ideas of how a rural community should be run and operated. I strongly disagree with him. I've worked in forestry, right? Forestry is one of the most dangerous sectors in New Zealand, and you got dumbass Brooke Van Velden making it worse. Māori workers in that sector. Okay, they haven't picked up a chainsaw before. He's probably twerked in front of forestry workers. I don't know what the fuck David Seymour gets up to in his spare time, but it's like he doesn't have any experience in the industry. He fails to regularly consult different authorities that work in sectors. Right? He doesn't consult iwi and hapu. We know that he's got a record of not consulting groups of people or people who specialize in different sectors. I don't want him governing me. Simple.
Yeah. I mean, he said his closest interaction with the rural sector was a flat white.
I know. I have more experience. I have more experience, and I'm a fucking vegan.
Yes, and I have more experience, and what do you call it? I wouldn't sit there and say I mean I lived rural for 3.5 years. I know how things work, but I wouldn't say I'm that. I wouldn't call myself an expert, and I'm more qualified than David Seymour. I mean, I probably know more about organics from Chris Jury's farm up in Tikanagi Waitra.
I have farm. I live next. Okay, I own farm animals. Okay, I got a ram that lives next door to me. I feed him lots of sheep nuts at this time of year. But I've got pet chickens. I've grown up on a farm as a kid.
You got a pet possum.
I've got a pet possum. That's how rural I am, right?
Yeah.
Like David Seymour doesn't know what he's talking. Yeah, Morty. David Seymour has no idea what he's talking about when it comes to rural issues, and he shouldn't be trying to even represent rural issues. I'm surprised that farmers vote for him. Why?
Yeah.
I think they vote for the guy called Mark Cameron.
Yeah.
Andrew Hoggart.
The real issue here is that Duncan is asking serious questions about corruption and kickbacks and influence, and David Seymour is doing the unconvincing, there's nothing to see here. This is serious. These are the people who are being given access and influence beyond, simply because they have dollars.
Is he seriously suggesting that the select committee process is a process where unelected people can give their feedback and that's undemocratic and wrong?
It sounds that way.
That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
No,
We know that he thinks that 99.5% of submissions for his regulatory standards bill were written by fucking bots.
No, it's David Seymour's distraction tactic because Duncan Webb is close to the bone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm concerned that he seemed to be conflating raising farm animals, livestock, with raising children.
Probably couldn't tell the difference between the two.
Yeah, let's be real here.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at David Seymour's potential conflicts of interest. I don't know if anyone saw what I posted in the chat. Everyone should read that. Beneficial interests and trustees of trusts, right? He's got the Seymour Family Trust beneficiary. He's got the Beachcomber Trust. He's got the Ferreri Trust, whatever the hell that is. Real properties, got multiple properties that he owns.
Someone who had no properties when he entered Parliament.
Yeah, well, whoa, holy crap. Look at all the gifts he's received. All Blacks and Wallabies tickets from the Eden Park Trust Board. 1 New Zealand Warriors Tiger tickets from Waterstone. Property Council Awards dinner from the Property Council. You don't think that's a conflict of interest right there? Hot Lap, Super Sprint Motorsport Championships.
Anything from a union?
Tickets.
Anything from a union?
No, nothing from a union.
Not even the taxpayers' union?
No. See,
Not
even
even
the
from a trade
unions want
union.
nothing if I can do with him. What did that
Yeah.
tell you? Right, but I'm going to force you all to enjoy the next part of this while I go and do my kids' dinner and do their insulin. So you guys enjoy this and I'll be back.
No problem. Say hello to, was it Take It For Me?
Yeah, I mean, I'm literally next to the kitchen, so just yell at me if you need me to run in and pause it.
Sure.
Chair, thank you, Minister. One of your ministry's roles is around stewardship of the system, and the big focus in this government, as you know, is around outcomes. I'm just wondering if you can elaborate for us what does success look like in terms of stewardship of the regulatory system? Because I know you're a small ministry, mighty, as you've said, but what does success look like, let's just say, from 18 months from now, and then maybe for the end of the forecast period, 5 years from now?
Yeah, no, good question. So if you look at over the next 18 months, our primary objective at the moment is passing the regulatory standards bill, having those principles in place, and that legislation, I think, will really assist with the quality of regulatory impact assessment, something that even the opposition are asking for. We'll also continue to carry out sector reviews. So you may have seen we've recently announced one in the telecommunications sector, which has been crying out for some intervention, or at least less intervention, for a while now. And you'll also see us beef up our, capability work, where we help mentor and educate government workers on how to be better regulators. If you look at over the next 5 years, we'll see more and more of New Zealand's legislation and regulation aligned with the principles of good regulation. Knowing what problem we're trying to solve, what are the costs and benefits of the rule, do the benefits exceed the costs, and who do they fall on? How are people's liberties and property rights impinged, and are we upholding the rule of law? Having these basic questions gives people confidence to invest. It means better jobs. It means better pay. It ultimately means a more prosperous society. Those are the objectives that we should all share. And yet, from what I see today, it seems that only some of us do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple more questions if I can. So I don't know if you have any examples of success stories of where your ministry has helped provide advice or to actually improve regulation from another ministry. I don't know if you can talk to anything.
Yeah, there's a lot of, we've talked about some of the big ones, but increasingly we see just really small things where people say, where do I go in government to report this problem? So, for example, the anti-money laundering regime was being applied to gift cards. So in theory, you had to trace somebody giving a gift card. This was really absurd. Gift cards are not a centre for organised crime. We have intervened and had that restriction removed. The people involved estimate that will probably cost them, save them about $7 million. So it's not huge, but it pays for half a year of the ministry. Similarly, we've had concerns raised by a company that was being forced to test for flour dust in its bakeries. It turned out that there was no equipment sensitive enough to detect such flour dust at the specified level. So we've intervened and had that changed. There was a company that was offering buy now, pay later. There were restrictions proposed on the way that they could recover their fees that would actually make their business model unviable, because the regulations were really set up for credit cards. So we intervened, and that was changed as an option, and that's made that option of buy now, pay later, which a lot of New Zealanders value, more viable to stay in New Zealand. So those are three little examples, and through our red tape tip line, we've I think had about 600 people come through now. So we're constantly looking for these smaller areas as well as some of the larger ones, such as I think I mentioned the hairdressing, the early childhood, the telecoms, the ag hort, and so on.
Thank you.
Just to up on that.
I've got a couple of subs lined up. You're happy for Duncan to take that one?
Look, you've said on a number of occasions, I want to give you an opportunity to correct that there were flour dust regulations. Now, I've seen the documentation. There were never flour dust regulations in force that required the 10 part per million test. The consultation from MB was whether the flour dust test should be changed from 1 part per million to 10 parts per million. So, and time and again, you've suggested that you may change the rule to make it go back. Do you want to correct that, or are you going to keep saying something which is not accurate?
Well, I think you could argue it's something that's not precise. However,
well, I would call it making shit up, actually.
Okay, hang on.
Well,
I'm
excuse me,
order.
Mr. Chair. Can we just hear what this Labor minister has just said?
Well, I said you seemed to make up that you had changed the rule.
Why don't you say
when
exactly what you
clearly
said?
the ministry did have input at an early stage, and it said it would be untenable to change the standard. And MB listened to that advice.
I think the member should say again what he just said.
Look,
not here to answer your questions.
I'm going to give Dr. Duncan Webb the opportunity to withdraw and apologise for his swearing.
The standard we walk by is the standard we accept in this parliament. We've already
I
established.
apologise for swearing.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Yes. So as I said, you could argue that it was imprecise, but the facts are that there was a regulation that would have had a huge cost if it was put in place. It wasn't, thanks to the Ministry for Regulation. QED, the Ministry for Regulation, has saved people in this country money quite a lot, and I think that's important.
Okay, we're going to go to Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the examples of success that you've cited to the questioning by the member, Dan Bidwa, it's been to do with reducing the sort of regulation that's been available on people. You've characterized it as, burdensome restriction to liberties and freedoms of New Zealanders. Why then did the Ministry for Regulation not submit against the benefit changes that this government is doing? For example, it's restricting the liberties of people on benefits. It's requiring them to have payment cards. I saw in the regulatory impact statement that the Ministry for Regulation didn't submit on those things. So is it just a matter of a selective application of freedom on those that already have quite enough in society and not applying it towards our most vulnerable?
Look, thank you. That's actually an excellent question, and I think elucidates some of the misunderstanding in politics in New Zealand. You see, the thing is, a benefit is not actually a right. It's somebody else's money that is taxed off them and given to another person with a set of conditions. And the taxpayers who have the money taken off them, they do actually have the right to put conditions and mutual obligation around the receipt of that money. That is quite different from a person who owns some property, for example, perhaps their land or their section, having restrictions placed on that, for example, can they build a house on it? So there's a very big difference between the process I described at the beginning of this session, taking money off people and then applying it to public purposes, in this case benefits. That is taxing and spending, and that is overlooked by the Treasury. On the other hand, there is the process of placing restrictions on the use and exchange of property, and the difference is that a benefit is not your property, it's someone else's money that was taxed and given to you.
So you're essentially suggesting that there's two classes of New Zealanders. The people who have property should be able to have more rights than the people without property. That's essentially the implication.
Well, I'm not aware of any New Zealanders that don't have property. Remember, property includes your money, it includes your possessions, it includes real property such as land and buildings, it includes your car if you have one. I know some of you Greens don't like that, but actually every New Zealander owns property to some level, and the ownership of property is the surest pathway out of poverty towards prosperity. That is why it is so critical that we have a framework that upholds people's right to use and exchange private property.
If you don't know anyone without any property, Mr. Seymour, I suggest you get out of your Epsom bubble. But let me just follow up with...
Didn't you stand against me in Epsom?
No.
Oh,
that's
sorry.
Lawrence Dunant.
Wow.
I'm often confused with my better looking.
Okay, one more stop, and then we're going to go to Dr. Woods.
I'm sorry. I thought you had.
I'm so flabbergasted by that exchange that I forgot my supplement.
Well, you're both so studious and articulate. It's an easy mistake to make.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Megan Woods.
All right, everybody, fill me in on what I just missed.
Francisco Hernandez sat down there and compared the restrictions that have been placed, the lack of restrictions for property owners, and brought a beneficiary example in there. And David Seymour used the term, well, it's someone else's money, so they have the rights to sit there and do that. But then, if you use the same logic, that would also apply to superannuation, because Rob Muldoon, when he was the Minister of Finance, concurrently holding the position of Prime Minister, he got rid of our superannuation scheme that would have sat down there and changed it. So technically, if you're a pensioner, you, according to David Seymour, a beneficiary scum.
Yeah, here's the problem with everything
I'm
Seymour just
always
said.
according to National, don't worry.
No. But here's the problem, right? The Human Rights Commission has stated very clearly, and this is part of our international agreements, is that everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for their health and well-being. So technically, yes, Kiwis do have a right to receive a benefit in social safety nets. Now, that social safety net doesn't have to be in the form of like supported living payments. It could be in the form of anything that meets those requirements. But he is incorrect to say that Kiwis do not have a right to a social safety net because it's someone else's money. That is wrong. That is incorrect, even by international standards.
Sorry. Yeah, and for clarity, yes, I know that Seymour is ACT, but same government.
And also, what is he going on about? What is he going on about? You know, getting all up and tight, being all fucking, sensitive about Duncan saying a swear word when Brooke Van Velden just stood up the other day and said cunt.
Yeah.
Oh, that was weeks ago. That's old news. Nobody cares anymore, remember?
Well, he's either getting gushy patsy questions from his own side or questions that he won't answer because they're too close to the bone from the opposition.
Why can't we have Professor Snape's truth potion he has to sit there and take before the select committee?
Yeah, okay. So I'm here right now at the Human Rights Commission, okay? I'm going to quote what they said. And I've got the link in the chat so people can look it up for themselves. But everyone as a member of society has the right to social security. So that's the benefit, that's welfare. Everyone has the right to security in the event of unemployment, sickness, disability, widowhood, old age, so that's superannuation, or other lack of livelihood in circumstances beyond his or her control. So Articles 22 and 25, Section 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights endorses this, so advocates for this. You have to provide a social safety net. I don't. What the fuck is he actually talking about? I don't think he even knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Does Seymour even know what he's talking about?
No.
All right. So shall we move along then?
Yeah, let's move along.
I should switch the screen first. That might help.
Yes,
Minister, I'm
yes,
interested in this line of questioning we've got around how it is that we're going to measure progress of the ministry and impact. Going back to the discussion you were having with Dr. Webb around the Floodust example, am I right in assuming then that the Ministry of Regulation is going to claim as wins things that could have been? So as has been established in the select committee process, you said it was not precise language, others would argue incorrect language, to claim that there was a measurement for flour already occurring. In fact, it was only under consultation. My question is,
I can answer your question straight away, Flo.
You can answer that, but I'll have some supplementaries.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely, because one of the ministry's key roles is to improve the process of making new rules. So yes, we absolutely intend not only to measure improvements to rules that already exist, but also improvements to rules that might have been made. I would say that they're equally important.
So what analysis are you putting in place to ascertain whether or not a normal consultation process couldn't have picked that up? In fact, it was revealed through MB's consultation process that that was not going to be a tenable standard. So what is the cost-benefit analysis that the Ministry of Regulation is doing on its own work, and what could be achieved far more cost-effectively in other agencies?
Well, again, if you look at the reviews that we've done, the benefits that they deliver are vastly greater than the entire budget of the ministry. Now, you could, of course, argue that if the ministry didn't exist, then regulations might have improved through other processes. The fact is that they didn't. And I suspect one of the biggest reasons for that is that once you put in place a specific process and say, right, we're going to go out, we're going to listen to the people who are regulated and say importing agricultural and horticultural products, we're going to have someone within government making the case for them that, actually these rules are wrong and need to be done differently. And often, Gráinne will tell you often that, they have quite, shall we say, robust conversations with regulators about, no, I think these regulated parties are right, you need to rethink this. Then so if your question is, can you exactly apportion a dollar figure to how much?
No, that wasn't my question.
I don't think you can. But
the question was whether or not the Ministry of Regulation will be doing cost-benefit analysis on its own work vis-a-vis alternative ways of monitoring regulation. My question is for you, Minister.
Yeah. Well, so to the extent that we can easily point to savings that are a large multiple of the Ministry for Regulation's budget. Now, you could argue that.
So you will be doing CBAs?
Well, no. What I'm saying is that you can point to dramatic savings from.
So no CBOs, that's all I needed to know. Just in terms of the
Well,
$17
no,
million.
I'm also explaining why.
No, they're fine. We've got limited time. Just wanted
Okay.
to clarify whether or not the Ministry of Regulation would be submitting itself to its own cost benefit analysis.
Well, that's a
No.
different
But in
question.
terms of the
If you'd like me to
$17
answer that
million
question, I
that
can.
You've already spent, Minister, you've already told us you won't be doing international benchmarking.
No, that's not
correct.
correct.
Sorry, my questions are for the Minister. You've already told us you won't be doing international benchmarking with other agencies in response to earlier
Well, I
questions.
haven't said that.
What I want to know then, you've made claims to this committee that your ministry is achieving things that international comparators have not. What advice have you received around our ability to benchmark against those international
let's have the
of all,
Minister to answer.
if you need to constantly paraphrase and claim that I've said things that I haven't, then I think the public will make up their mind who's being misrepresented here. Second of all, if I can just refer, it is nice to be polite to our guests. And Gráinne would like to address a question you just made, so I'll give her that opportunity in case you'd like.
Particularly around international benchmarks.
Okay, yes, but with all due respect, Minister, this is the time for the Select Committee to question you as Minister. If you need your officials to step in for you.
But it's
that's-
that's rude.
I mean, I just think we're going to make a great video of the behaviour of Labor MPs on this committee, and I think people are going to decide whatever happens next year, we don't want them back over here.
Okay, let's put it to the Chief Executive.
Well, I'll make it very quick. I think, first of all, the range of work that the ministry does is quite varied and significant, and that's appropriate because the regulated parties all have different pain points. It might be interesting for the members to know that of the tips that have come through the tip line, 70% of people have told us they have not raised these issues with previous government departments. So it's a really good opportunity to hear about pain points. It would not be a good use of taxpayers' money to analyse everything and do a full CBA on it, but there will be cost-benefit analysis done at appropriate levels across the range of our work. Internationally, we have been reaching out and people have been reaching out to us. Our model of working is actually slightly different to many of the other international players. And that's because we're actually doing things and been given levers by government to either stop not helpful new regulations and improve current regulations. We will continue, because it is only our first year, to work with those international people, learn from them and benchmark where appropriate.
Okay, I'm conscious of time. We're in the last 7 minutes. I'm going to go to Jamie Arbuckle, New Zealand first.
Thank you, Minister.
You were going to say something, Gary.
David Seymour's methods for not having to answer the question that he's being asked. I mean, to me, I just explode every time I see it because it's his standard response, and yet, but also it's the telltale that the questions are close to the bone.
Yeah.
If you look at the different way that he answers the Patsy questions from the government side.
Oh, there's gaping.
Yeah. It's
Discrepancies.
worlds apart.
Yeah, like
He has lots of ways of saying I'm not going to answer your question while he's
Yeah.
And it really, really annoys me. But it annoys me that he's good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Actually, speaking to that comment that I just pulled up, one-term government, don't get comfortable. I have just recently learned, thanks to a fantastic creator on TikTok named Ash Reborn, that the Regulatory Standards Bill is a paramount piece of legislation that must pass for the coalition to continue. So if we, the people of New Zealand, can make it fail, we can force a snap election.
Excellent. Let's do that.
It's going to be a fuckload more work for Sam and I with 2 loads of elections in 1 year.
Well, can we even sit down there and try to actually pull off venue hiring, considering, I mean, it took, like, from when I tried to start approaching venues, it was 6 months. Like, 90% of the venues were booked in February. However, the last one, I only got an email today to finalise the last venue. I knew it was somewhat confirmed, but it's been finalised today.
But we were booking very far in the future. I'm sure if they were a lot closer in time, those replies would come back a lot quicker.
Yes, that is true. Yes, you are right.
So, yeah, it will cause a lot more work for Sam and I running a whole second set of election shows in 1 year.
Well, I mean, could we even sit down there and actually Like, will we be able to go around the country like we do our normal show, or will we have to try and like bulk slab it in certain locations and basically go, can you drive here, can you come remotely?
I'm sure by that time I will have a car of my own and I'll gladly sleep in it to get the coverage we need.
I was just going to say, take your parents' van.
I'm sure that in that circumstance, people would not mind if we ran completely remote shows.
and just leave it for the big centres or the places where we can basically ring up and get a booking on the hoof, like All Saints in Hamilton.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But, right. We should continue.
Yes, let's
hey, look,
continue.
we've nearly made it halfway through this video already. Fuck, we're doing good compared to last night.
Yes.
Hey, push the button. There we go.
My
The
finger
Productivity
is on the
Commission, I
button.
know you're an advocate to wind that up, and obviously that got wound up and the money basically went into the Ministry of Regulation. That's my understanding of how that
Yes.
worked. Could you give me like the differences between the work that the Productivity Commission did and the work the Ministry of Regulation is doing?
Certainly. So first of all, the Productivity Commission was in operation for about 13 years, I think. I could be out a year there. It had an annual budget of approximately $10 million per year. And it produced, I think, some very fulsome, very high quality reports on quite a range of issues. I would argue that successive governments, regardless of which side, didn't really take advantage of the reports to the extent that they could. I think some of what the current government is doing around housing is guided, at least indirectly, by the excellent work that was published by the Commission in around 2014. However, in general, I would say that huge reservoir of work by the Productivity Commission is still there and still there to be used by governments should they choose. Now, we could have continued with the Productivity Commission. They could have produced a lot more of these reports. But what we wanted to do was actually have a department that brings about real change. And so, as I've mentioned today, in the first 15 months or so that the Ministry for Regulation has existed, we can point to a large number of tangible changes to policy that have come about, and that's because we're not there to produce reports. I mean, the Ministry does produce reports off its reviews, but that's a very small part of its business. Its mandate is to be a central agency, to participate in government policy making, to improve the standards of regulatory impact, to help pass bills, to conduct sector reviews, to triage red tape tip line. All of these are actually directly making changes in government as opposed to producing policy reports.
Okay, I'm going to go.
Anyone want to speak to that at all?
What is he talking about? The number one thing I found about David Seymour is that he is really talented at generating vague, non-specific answers to questions. Like, he's talking about successive governments did not take advantage of the information in the reports. What does he mean? How does he want them to take advantage? Does he want them to go, okay, let's start slashing safety requirements for things? You know, it's like, why can't he be specific? Why is he being a pussy?
Have you noticed how there's no mention of him communicating in any way with the representatives of the people or the workers, unions, etc.? Everything's coming out of his mouth is slanted on reducing costs for those who own everything.
Yes.
I don't see him talking anywhere about any advice or communications he's had with the other people at the other end of the equation who are actually protected by regulation.
Yep.
And the other thing is, if you actually sat there and had a sewage outpour sit there poured into David Seymour's back house as a result of this, he would sit down there and order the police to do, I don't know, whatever, to get the person.
I'm just reading through the Law Society submission for this bill, and there's three things that there's multiple things, actually more than three things that keeps being pointed out, and that's I can give it a quote. In the Law Society's view, it is striking that a policy process purporting to promote good lawmaking, which is a term he keeps bringing up all the time, good lawmaking, and high quality regulation should fail to meet the proposal's own standards. So it's not even meeting the standards that he's put out there, this proposal, such as inadequate consultation, problem definition, options analysis, unnecessary legislative content, ineffective legislative content. This is the Law Society.
Yeah, well, I mean, if he sat there and had his own standards applied to them, he would sit there and scream, "It's unfair to call me a hypocrite."
Like, stop getting ChatGPT to write your shit for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he is good at burning up time when there's a time-limited committee going on.
Yeah. He is a good filibuster.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, he's good at wasting people's time.
Yeah.
Lots of words without saying anything. But yeah, like I say, he does it much better than Luxon.
Yes. Yeah. He looks convincingly strong in it.
Yeah,
What makes him
absolutely.
dangerous.
Right. Our member online, Mr. Kapakingi. So I am wondering if that is Edu. Should we go and find out?
Or Maria Meno.
That would make far more sense.
Yep.
Let's hear from Edu's mom.
I was hoping for Edu.
I know, right?
Man, he's going to be like, right,
Edu ain't an MP.
Right, yeah, he's not an MP, so unfortunately this week we won't be hearing from him.
That's right. Maria Meno is absolutely good at her job.
Oh yes,
I want to make him.
Where do you think Eric gets his magnificence from?
I don't know. He did have to share it with two other babies while he was 9 months in the womb.
No, I've come across his other siblings, and it runs in the family. Serious.
Oh, so his was it two? What do you call it? Sibling part of the trio of triplets are like all very similar.
Oh, look, it's
Very
hereditary.
awesome people.
Good shit.
Very awesome people.
You know what? Edu should challenge David Seymour to a dance-off. I still think Edu would win that. Whether it be boxing or dancing, Edu's probably going to win it.
Oh, funny. Okay, right. Well, let's continue. When my buttons work. There we go.
To someone who's been very patient, our member online, Ms. Kapakingi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Minister. I would like you, if you would, to explain the 0.5 million that was spent by your ministry on the urgent Waitangi Tribunal claim, Minister. If you could explain what that was spent on, why it was spent, what it was spent on, and what why are we better off because that was spent at all?
Well, it's certainly a very good question. Frankly, we spent it because we're required to by the law. The tribunal, as I'm sure you know, is a standing commission of inquiry. It has the right to call people to make submissions. If you're called, then you need to pay for legal representation. The ministry was forced to do that, and we did so. What benefit that brought, to be honest, I think the member asking the question might be better to ponder it than me.
Okay, that's right. We're going to go to a final primary by Dr. Webb.
Yeah, look.
Hold on. What the fuck just happened?
I don't know. We're going to have to replay it.
Okay. I would like to ask you, if you would, to explain the $500,000 that was spent by your ministry on the urgent Waitangi Tribunal claim. Minister, if you could explain what that was spent on, why it was spent, what it was spent on, and why we are better off because that was spent at all. It's certainly a very good question. You know, frankly, we've spent it because we're required to by law.
I thought he liked changing laws.
Yeah. The tribunal, as I'm sure you know, is a standing commission of required inquiry. It has a right to call people to make submissions. If you're called, then you need to pay for legal representation. The ministry was forced to do that, and we did. So what benefit that brought, to be honest, I think the member asking the question might be better to ponder that than me.
That doesn't even make sense the second time.
He's trying to say that they were forced to spend money because Maori were being uppity.
Oh no, red tape.
That's seriously what he's trying to imply there. He's trying to say that the money we spent was forced on us by Maori, and Maori should think about that.
We got too uppity.
Yeah.
How disgusting.
I'm gonna point out this. Hold on, this one in particular, right? It's done in emotion because I feel that in my soul.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention earlier too was David Seymour. All foreigners look the same to him, don't they?
Oh yes, that's why he didn't even know who ran against him.
So shocking. I was too gobsmacked to comment on it at the time.
Laura, I love the name change.
Yeah, be a submission bot. Submit
Yeah.
against this bill.
Yeah. Also a submission bot. Woo!
Yes.
I made mention of my not being a bot in my submission.
Well, he probably didn't notice, but two people who stood against him who are not of, I'd say, white descent in the 2023 Epsom election would have been Lawrence Zinan and Nina Sue.
Oh, wow.
And that's just going by last names. And if you wanted to, if you went by last name, you could look at Tanya Unkovich, but I don't think he would consider in that category. And Unkovich is based on Eastern Europe, was it European descent? I think Serbia or somewhere. Laura remembers better.
Yeah.
He was just he was mistaking a New Zealander of Philippine descent with a New Zealander of Chinese descent.
Yeah, so what do we learn here? We've learned that Dave Seymour can't write a bill. We've learned that David Seymour can't tell Asians apart. We've learned that David Seymour has probably never touched grass because he doesn't hang around rural communities. What are we doing here?
I actually think his efforts to avoid answering the question reveal so much other things along the way. It's quite funny.
Absolutely agree.
Okay, let's see what the next bit that's happening.
Yeah, back to Dr. Webb. Let's go.
I'm interested in the Regulatory Standards Board, and I guess it's appointed entirely by you, and the legislation as it stands doesn't really provide any guidance as to the qualities needed. And I guess I'm concerned that given the close relationship that the ministry has with the New Zealand Initiative, and Bryce Wilkinson in particular, that in fact, I mean, he has interviewed employees. Your chief economist was appointed. He was on the interview panel for it. I believe he was on the interview panel for the chief executive. I've got hundreds of pages of emails to the chief executive from him and to other staff within the ministry. I guess my point is this: are you just going to appoint to this board regulatory economists like Bryce Wilkinson, who essentially have a political axe to grind?
Well, a couple of things there. First of all, I don't appoint the board if the bill is to pass Parliament.
It's actually what the bill says, but I know the cabinet procedure.
Yes, well, if you know cabinet procedure, then you'll be well aware that the bill provides for cabinet to appoint the regulatory standards.
The bill provides for you to appoint them, but I understand the cabinet procedure, which is you get your cabinet colleagues' approval.
Yes, so that's not really me appointing them because the other cabinet colleagues could veto a decision or approve a decision. It would seem that they're making the decision. So you either understand cabinet procedure or you don't. The second point I would make is that, you know what, Duncan, you got me. I admit, have been taking advice from one of, if not New Zealand's best regulatory economists, and he's been giving it to us entirely for free because he cares about public policy.
Well,
it is that bad.
It
really is that bad.
But someone from a lobby group called the New Zealand Initiative has been sitting on interview panels for public servants.
Well, first of all, they're not a lobby group; they're a think tank, and it's not unusual. It's not unusual for. It's not unusual for an outside expert, to sit on an interview panel. It's a normal public
lunch dates and coffee catch-ups.
I beg your pardon?
Yes,
you've got us again. Yes, we have been having lunch and coffee. You've got us.
Yeah.
Red-handed.
Just quick supplementary, Minister.
Top of the hour.
It seems Dr. Webb's very interested in the Regulatory Standards Bill. Would you welcome opportunity to come back before the committee and talk specifically about that bill?
Oh, if there was an opportunity for me to talk about the Regulatory Standards Bill, I would be there with bells on. I think it's one of the most important things that the government has introduced to Parliament. I think that it has the potential to greatly improve New Zealand's standards of living by giving voters more transparency about the rules and regulations being made. And if people would like to talk about the Regulatory Standards Bill some more, then wow, that would be fabulous.
Okay, let's draw a line there. We started 5 minutes earlier, so we'll...
Like, is he trying to say, oh, look, you got me. Oh, look, you got me again. Oh, look, you got me. Sing hallelujah.
Quick, throw me a Patsy question. I'm drowning.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. It's like, oh no, look, yeah, we've been doing something so bad working with this person. Oh, you got me. Ah ha 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 ha.
Yeah, this is the part where I want.
So
this is
I'm
the
sorry,
part-
a government official is taking the advice of someone who is not, and is not on any of their boards, is not on any of their panels,
Probably
and
hasn't been
saying, oh,
vetted
it's all well
properly.
and fine because he cares.
Maybe it's the term called unsolicited advice. How about when we get a regulatory standard submissions, we send them to through the correct process, and then we send an additional copy to David Seymour so he can get some advice from us on the bill. It's advice. It might be unwanted, but it's still advice.
But we care, so therefore it counts.
A person who tries to calm people's fears by using the word think tank,
Yeah.
which just makes everyone rhino.
Of course they laughed. Do you know how many people that are involved in the New Zealand Initiative that are involved with Taxpayers Union and other groups that actually do lobbying? Of course there's crossover here. Yes, of course. Yes, laugh at Seymour. Very stupid.
When they talk about people with swipe card access to Parliament, that's who they're talking about.
I mean, considering, didn't they want to sit there and have Chris Farfoy, like a lobbyist ban because of Chris Farfoy? Mentioning corruption, and now they're literally doing the same thing.
Well,
Yeah, that's another case of relying on everyone have short memories.
I was going to ask, when are you meant to have your swipe card, Gary?
They keep on locking me out of the gallery. I'm not going to get a swipe card.
Right.
So, can we see what happens after there? Because I think there's a bit to do with Gráinne and Moss afterwards.
Look, I mean, let's be real here. Like, you know what I said before about the New Zealand Tax Union? They're an official partner of the Atlas Network alongside with the New Zealand Initiative. Of course, there's crossover there. So, yeah. Stupid.
Yeah.
Atlas Network ministers being advised by Atlas Network think tanks and reported on by Atlas Network journalists.
Yep.
Oh my God. To a nation of habitually drunk people.
Yeah.
I think I just explained how we got the government we got.
Right.
Let's see what's up next on that same clip, because it's only an hour in.
It is. We're not quite an hour in. But we are still doing better than we were last night. Right, let's go.
Talk about the regulatory standards bill some more, then wow, that would be fabulous.
Okay, let's draw a line there. We started 5 minutes early, so we'll finish bang on 10 o'clock. Thank you, Minister. Thank you. We'll go to the Chief Executive.
Bang on 10 o'clock. Oh my God.
Well, it's going to be expected.
Right.
Next session.
This is
Yeah, okay. We've got. Thank you, members. Thank you, members. We've now got 45 minutes, and with the Ministry of Regulation, and I'll ask the Secretary and Chief Executive, Ms. Moss, to introduce her team. If there's anyone that, other than you three, that needs to speak or is invited to speak, please come up to the microphone so we can hear you and record you. Thank you.
Okay, well, good morning again, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. So as you already know, I'm Gráinne Moss, the Chief Exec at the Ministry for Regulation. I'm joined on my right by Paula Knapp, who's one of our deputies who leads our corporate area, and also by Mr. Royal, Andrew Royal, who you've met before, who's one of our deputies for policy. And just behind me, I think, there's Paul there. Do you want to wave, Paul? Paul's the final member of the deputies, and he leads all the reviews and system capability. I would like to just do a couple of opening statements. I'll keep it quick because I know you'll want to get to questions. At the Ministry, we see that regulation is one of the key tools that government uses to shape how our country works. I mean, it affects nearly every part of our daily life, from how we travelled here today to how businesses operate, to the safety of our food and the strength of our trade. And when it's done well, it builds trust and confidence, and it helps the people and businesses get on and do what they do best. But when it's outdated or unnecessary, It slows things down, increases cost, and holds back growth. So in our first year, we have made real progress. We've reviewed the early childhood education sector, made 15 recommendations to Cabinet, all were accepted. The changes there simplify rules, reduce duplication, and importantly, let children spend more time with their teachers. In agriculture and horticulture, our changes are expected to unlock 272 million in benefits over 20 years by speeding up product approvals. And we're also helping small businesses by removing outdated rules in the hair and barbering industry, saving them up to $1 million a year. We've already heard earlier in the Minister's section around some of the new rules that we've stopped, unnecessary new rules around buy now, pay later. One that he didn't mention was we're helping bring medical conferences back to New Zealand by fixing the advertising rules, unlocking up to $90 million worth of future revenue. And actually one I'm particularly proud of is we worked with the Ministry of Justice to raise the thresholds for carers who look after the financial affairs of their loved ones, so that they can actually focus on caring for their loved ones and do less paperwork. We have heard from hundreds of New Zealanders through our red tip line, over 700 issues. So look, our work is making a difference. And looking ahead, our focus is clear. We need to continue to do work to ensure that New Zealand's regulation is modern, practical, and people-focused. And we'll continue in areas like reviews such as telecommunications. We'll look at sectors with strong potential for growth. And we're also helping, I think, as the member mentioned, agencies design better regulations that are clear, necessary, and easy to follow. So today, we look forward to talking with you in more detail about the work of our small team. Leading the ministry has been a real privilege. I'm very proud of our team. They're smart, hardworking, and politically neutral professionals who care deeply about making regulation better for everyone and lives better for New Zealanders. In our first year, we've answered over 1,000 Official Information Act requests and written parliamentary questions from members of this committee and Parliament. We've been open and transparent about our work, and we very much look forward to your questions today.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Ms. Moss. Now we'll go to Duncan.
I want to dig into the sector reviews first. And first of all, I just want to kind of get a take on the role, because after the ECE review, there was a statement that I think came from the Minister that talked about essentially that different enforcement tools will be used. Graduated enforcement tools will be used to respond to breaches, the remaining licensing criteria, giving a regulator a range of enforcement measures, changing the sector's culture from a punitive approach to promoting quality. Now, whether that's good or bad is one thing, but isn't it for the actual regulator to determine regulatory strategy rather than the Ministry for Regulation to be telling them what their regulatory strategy is? I'm just wondering where the line is between a regulator doing their job and the Ministry of Regulation kind of being the boss of everyone.
So look, I think that's actually a very good question. So what we are is we are an independent government agency. So and actually, I think a member over here, I think Mr. Arbuckle asked about the Productivity Commission. And if we look at how the Productivity Commission worked, it did these incredibly robust reports. What we are aiming to do is incredibly robust reports as well. But what we're doing is walking alongside the parties and being open about our findings during the reports, findings from regulated parties, findings in that case in ECE from carers, from whānau, from parents, and from teachers. So what we do as we're going through our reviews, we share all of the information that we're collecting. We have a number of workshops and sessions with regulated parties, with regulators, and we test what might be good strategies. We also look at international best practice, and what we would say is that a number of regulators that we've worked with have welcomed our view and how they can improve.
So that's all advisory, I guess, but it might be just the Minister kind of trying to claim wins, but I would have thought it's for the other minister to say, here's the regulatory strategy we're going to adopt.
I think what we have done, because we have been the leaders in the field of regulation, and we've been able to look at how regulators can improve, and we have provided that advice, but we've provided that advice through recommendations and evidence-based advice. Then what has happened when the reports have been finalised, they have gone to Cabinet. So it's for Cabinet to then accept the recommendations, and a number of the ministers would be representing the regulators.
Still on that theme of the reviews, I just was looking at, and I didn't get a chance to ask the Minister, the agricultural review and the claimed $272 million kind of win. Now, I get that it's a model and it has assumptions about what will happen in the future. But what struck me about it was that it was a scenario analysis. It wasn't a cost-benefit analysis. So all that it did was look at the uplifts, and it didn't look at any of the potential costs and downsides and risks. Now, that seems very unusual to use that, given that cost-benefit analysis is very much at the heart and centre of the Ministry for Regulation. To then pitch it as, let's do a scenario analysis, why was that chosen? rather than actually saying, here's the potential costs of changing the agricultural chemical regulations?
So there's a couple of reasons, and I think the other piece is actually all of the changes have not yet been made. We would be anticipating that, and we will be reviewing all of our reviews over the longer term. So, for example, in agriculture and horticulture, there are some recommendations for some legislative change. Those haven't gone through the House yet. Once they go through the House, once we know the detail of those, we'll actually be able to track, well, what is the cost benefit of those actual changes.
Just didn't take into account any of the costs. So it just strikes me there's a real risk that you do kind of a business model approach and you say, for the industry, what's the uplift? Whereas a cost benefit analysis would say, and if there's a risk of an environmental leak, this is a potential downside. We need to put that on the other side of the ledger. So in terms of the economic analysis, you haven't done both sides of the ledger on this review.
So one of the things that we did identify in that review is that the way the regulators were working was very effectively managing the risk. I'm very happy to get our chief economist to talk at more length in terms of the number of analytical tools that we have and how they would be applied to different reviews, because not all reviews will have the same analytical tools because they're not actually looking, some of them are smaller, some of them are larger. We need to make them fit for purpose. Very happy to have the chief economist come and answer some more questions either now or later.
A better use of time for me to put it in writing after the post-hearing question.
Okay, thank you.
Good if I think your economist is here.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
I thought that was it. He was agitated. So perhaps I'll seek some explanation there.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Webb. I'm going to
go. Yep, moving into a new primary question after that. Just had to double check.
Fair enough.
I thought it was interesting that Duncan there was sort of fishing to find out who sets the agenda of the ministry, whether the ministry itself is setting its agenda or whether it's the minister setting the agenda. And I thought it was quite telling that they talked about all recommendations being agreed to. She made them sound like a rubber stamp organisation, not an organisation driving the agenda.
Because they're an independent government agency, so they provide advice. None of it's binding, so David Seymour can essentially pick and choose what he likes.
Yeah.
And I think that they go through and they've cherry-picked obviously ridiculous regulations to throw in occasionally to highlight that they're doing something that's absolutely necessary without actually, to obscure the darker side of what they're doing.
Yeah.
I will say, though, she is a lot better at answering questions than Seymour was.
Yeah,
well,
because
she ain't a politician. She's just the CEO. I mean, put it this way, at least she's answering these questions. She wasn't like that with the Oranga Tamariki stuff. Like, Tracy Martin was much better at answering the questions than Gráinne Moss was.
Yeah, I thought a bit disappointed that Duncan didn't follow up with another question about who's pulling whose strings.
Yeah. Yeah.
But maybe Mr. Cameron Brewer, the chair, might sit there and rule it out of order.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on to Francisco's question.
go to a sup from Franciscus Mendes. Oh, it's a primary? Okay, go for it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The minister described your ministry as a small but mighty ministry and the third smallest in the government, I believe. Why has it got such a top-heavy structure? It's got 3 deputy chief executives, I believe.
That's correct.
That many?
Yes, it's got 3. Yes.
Does it need that many?
Yes, it does actually. It does need that many. So I mean, there are clear areas of our work. So there's a great deal of policy work. So we have a dedicated leader for that. We have a dedicated leader for the work on reviews and also helping build system capability. And then we have a dedicated leader who's Paula on the things that make things happen, like hiring people, making sure that we're being a good employer, and making sure we've got safe IT systems, making sure we've got a building to work in, making sure that we can answer all of the Official Information Act requests, parliamentary requests that we get, and fulfil our obligations as a government agency, making sure that we get a decent report from the auditor, which I believe we have had, so, which has indicated good financial control. So,
here you go.
Can you name another government agency with around 100 employees with 3 deputy chief executives?
I think you can happily look at a few other government departments. So, I mean, if you look at the other central agencies, there's some equivalents there.
Okay, we're going to go to Dr. Megan Woods. Did you have a sub?
Yeah, I did. And it is just about how you're working with those central agencies, what the structures that have been put in place to work within those central agencies. I mean, there is the potential for a large overlap with a number of those. So what, very briefly, what is the structure that's been put in place?
We have been very prudent about that because we are a very small agency. And we're very keen not to do duplication of work that others are doing. So, for example, the central agencies, the three central agencies, Treasury, the DPMC, and also the Public Service Commission, have a regular meeting. We only go to that meeting when there's items that are of relevance on the agenda that would relate to regulation.
What would that look like?
So, for example, if they were concerned about the capability at a regulator, they might bring us in to have a conversation about that.
So, what about if there's legislation going up? Have regulatory impact statements. Is that something that would be discussed?
That isn't something that has been discussed to date with us by the central agencies.
Is that something that your ministry will start looking at? I mean, this parliament has had more legislation without regulatory impact statements since we've had a ministry for regulation.
Yeah, so we are working on formal reporting around the regulatory impact statements, and I think you will probably be aware that we had a change to the Cabinet Circular at the start of the year around some of the requirements for agencies, and we will be doing public reporting in the near future on regulatory impact statements.
We could just very soon. The public report, that's critical, right?
Probably first quarter of the next financial year. Yeah, so we're almost in that.
Oh, yeah.
This coming
July. Okay,
July onwards. Yeah.
I'm going to go to this side of the table for a primary from Ryan Hamilton.
That was weird.
It was very weird.
Right.
The question.
Many government departments have free chief executives.
Yeah.
No, free deputies, and it's like, yes,
Why?
but how many of them have 100 employees?
Yeah. Why do you need a top-heavy structure? What for? I mean, that was the question.
You probably only need one.
Roles.
Yeah, and she basically responded that we need dedicated leaders for review, making sure that they're a good employer, making sure that they do audits, making sure that. But it's like, do you really need three?
Right.
Do you need three to do that? And then, when the follow-up question came through, can you provide a comparative agency? Her answer was just basically, no, just look at other agencies, bro. We haven't done that work.
Yeah, I haven't bothered to look into it, but you can.
Now, I know a school that has 100, it's about 120 students, but let's sit there and put this into context. Okay. Now, the principal still Scott, guess how many deputy principals she has?
One?
Yes, she has one.
Wow.
So, it doesn't sit there and stay on there and actually sitting there looking at, I don't know, I swear she had more staff than what's on the website, but then I probably also had the kindergarten staff that used to also mix in with it. But yeah, she's effectively, sit and take a look. Scylla don't have free principals to sit there and manage 100, free deputies to help manage 120 students. She sits down there and has one who actually actively teaches in the classroom.
Yeah. My college had mid-range hundreds, I believe, of students. We had a principal, a deputy principal, and an assistant principal for when the deputy wasn't available.
Yeah, it's the same with Paraparaumu College.
But the thrust of that question was actually about trying to highlight the bloat of a ministry where the minister in charge is constantly going on about productivity and efficiency.
Well, I'm looking at Newtown School. Now, Newtown School is about 4 times the number of students to 3 to 4 times the number to what Whero Bay does. And they have just one deputy and one assistant. They don't even have 2 assistants. And actually, interestingly, at Newtown, they have they're a female only, all the leadership is female.
But whereabouts in the answer to that question was there a good explanation as to why the ministry is so top heavy?
Well, apparently one of them needs to be the HR department. I mean, since when did when did deputy chief executive be HR?
Were you convinced by Never, is what I'm saying?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
That's what I said. There was no good answer.
She literally
that's
just said,
fine.
she pretty much just said, just go have a look at other agencies, bro. Do the
Yeah.
comparative work yourself.
Well, we've just looked at 2 primary schools.
Yeah. So my question, okay. So Sam knows I don't actually know a lot about the way the house functions. My original role in the show was going to be the person that asks the questions that the general public might be asking because they don't know all the things. If 100 employees is a small group,
Agency.
thank you, agency.
Yeah.
How big are other agencies?
I mean, I think, what do you call it? IRD's management structure. I mean, here's a great one, the tax
like things like IRD and the Reserve Bank, and well, they're not controlled by the government, I know. But understandably, they would have hundreds, possibly verging on thousands of staff.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Like I'm trying to say, IRD has a commissioner. It has 1, 2, 3, 4. I'd say 4 deputies plus a chief tax consul attached to it. So effectively, the IRD has 5 staff members. Now, the IRD is the tax department. And we only have 5.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at employees. That's got about over 6,000 employees, right? I need to look at their business. I need to look at the structure, but I'm pretty sure that they're not top heavy as this independent government agency.
Yeah.
Well,
Most places are bottom heavy in low paid areas.
yeah.
The opposite of this ministry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Like the reason they are top heavy is because they have just got more people that they want to get paid more. Is all I can understand of it.
Yeah. It's just like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But fishing for an actual justification for it just gets a word salad.
Yeah. Now let's hear more word salads from Gráinne.
Yeah. Oh, we're going to
Hamilton, and then going to go to Ms. Kapakingi.
Thanks, Chair. 2 short, sharp ones, if I can. The first one, the Minister talked about, I think it was 98 regulations in PCE.
The first one.
98, and you mentioned, I think, 15 that went back to Cabinet. I just wonder if you could talk about.
So the 98 were the licensing criteria. So
Right.
if you want to open an ECE centre, you had to tick these 98 licensing criteria. Then we made 15 recommendations about the regulatory management system that overlays ECE, where improvements could be made. One of those recommendations was around changing the 98 to make it more streamlined.
Right, okay. No, thanks for that clarification. And just quickly also, the triage, the hotline, the regulation hotline, you mentioned, I think you said there's over 600 already.
Well, it's actually over 8. It's over 700. It's almost 800 at the moment.
Right, and obviously you triage those.
Yeah.
Are there any particular themes coming out
Yeah.
that you can discuss now? Or
Yeah, so we actually also we've started to do a quarterly report on that as well. That's available on our website. So a couple of key themes. 70% of people tell us they haven't told government agencies before about this problem. We are seeing probably 5 main areas, a lot to do with building consent, RMA. But interestingly, one of the more interesting ones that we've got high volume on at the minute is small food manufacturers. So, what we're seeing is we're seeing trends in terms of volume. The other thing that we are able to do with our data is actually look at where it's coming from in the country. So we can look at that as well. And then we're also reporting on what are we doing with those. So a large number of them, we are working with the agency who is responsible for the regulator. And then others, we investigate ourselves, sometimes with another agency or by ourselves, and then we make recommendations to appropriate ministers.
Thank you. I imagine it's quite a revelation in itself, just what comes out. But just to ensure I heard you correctly, did you say 70% have already been in touch with government?
No, 70% haven't.
Haven't, okay.
So we're really quite pleased about that because it obviously indicates people have wanted to go somewhere but weren't quite sure where to go.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We've still got 30 minutes, members. I'm going to go to
One thing I can't get out of my brain, small food manufacturers. Is this small companies that manufacture food, or is this companies that manufacture small foods?
Or it might be low number of employees.
Small companies, okay.
Yeah, so what could be classed as a small business manufacturers? There's a place in Lower Hutt called Sward Kitchen, and they manufacture and sell direct to public. Was it Indian style product sweets, that sort of thing? But they do it in a manufacturer's capacity as well. That could be classed as a small manufacturer because they're just a small, what do you call it, 5 staff, sort of, independent business. Whereas a large scale manufacturer could be, say, like Goodman Fielder.
Right. I had a total ADHD moment, and that was the only fish that I could grab.
Yeah. So that could be what's...
So I'd be interested to know how many of these ECE recommendations that were accepted were actually focused on child safety and welfare, if any.
Wow.
Because it seems to me like the entire focus is just on reducing compliance for costs.
Yeah.
Well,
it sounds like none of them had anything to do with child safety or teacher safety.
Removing the need to heat a childcare centre.
I'm sorry, what?
One of them was to remove the need to heat it to a minimum of 18 degrees Celsius.
Mm-hmm.
The children yearn to be frozen.
Yeah, it's just basically, it's like that was one of the recommendations. And I can tell you, 2-part kindergarten were absolutely fuming when they heard that.
Yeah, I don't blame them.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but what horrible bitch of a person does not want their child to be warm?
Well, probably someone who
Seymour?
doesn't sit down there
I
and
don't
have kids.
The person whose dividends are affected by the power bill.
Well, yeah.
That is true, Gary.
Yeah.
They could
I
always
still
put
stand by my
solar panels on
point.
the roof.
Damn Seymour.
I mean, that would actually be the more efficient aspect if they did put solar panels on the roof of a childcare centre. At least when the heat pump's going, it's going to be free.
That's too woke, Sam. We can't have that.
Oh, yeah.
If that got their way, all children would be cryogenically frozen during the day.
You know what? I don't actually hate that. No.
Laura, sort it out. I know that's not what you meant.
Yeah.
No, don't freeze children. That's a bad idea.
No.
Children work best at room temperature.
Yes. Unless that room temperature happens to be in the Hawke's Bay and then they're fucking melting.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, you can speak for that, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The people at the ministry act like they haven't read the instruction manual.
Oh. All right, let's move on to Ms. Kapakingi's primary question.
Yes. Come on, Mother Meno.
Ms. Kapakingi, online.
Kia ora, Mr. Chair, thank you. Morena koutou. There's a sub-questions, Mr. Chair, just on not the immediate previous to me, but the line carrying before. And it's around, Gráinne, you use the word prudent, which is a good word. And to that end, I'm interested in it related to cultural and competency across your team, in yourself or even your DepSecs and your whole team. And to be prudent when it relates to being Māori is critical to the capability of your team. And I want to know, have you got that? Are you getting that? How confident are you that you have that cultural Māori capability and competency across your team, and therefore all the understandings that it requires to create the working model that will relate to Māori and understand Māori, given the despise that Māori hold for regulation, standards, bill, and anything else that sounds remotely like it?
Kia ora, thank you for the question. So in terms of the journey of the ministry, I mean, about a year ago, there was probably about 10 of us. So, we are still building on a number of fronts. We've only recently kind of hit our full kind of headcount. So I'm delighted with the level of diversity that we have and the capability, capacity and the talent that we've got within our team. But do I think we need to continue to develop our capability and capacity, our thought leadership, our ability to interact and engage with all of the populations of New Zealand? Yes, look, we're very small and we still have to continue to do that work. Which we are leaning into. We have engaged with a range of particularly Maori businesses. They've come forward and with their pain points as well. And it's been good to build on previous relationships that I've gained and actually my staff have gained in their careers as we engage across New Zealand.
Can I just confirm, Mr. Chair, sorry, just to sub on. So do you have any Maori clinicians on your team, Maori technicians on your team currently, despite the size? Because every time, when people talk about diversity, it assumes that Māoris in that. We're not that we're not diverse, but we are treaty partners. So unless that's understood again, I don't have any confidence thus far anyway. Do you have Māori on your team, Māori clinicians, technicians, capability on your team? Not because you know some Māori people. I don't mean that. I mean live, warm Māori bodies in your team.
So we have a number of very talented Māori staff on our team.
And at what level do they function at? So are they the receptionist or are they in your leadership design team?
So I couldn't answer that question in detail, but we have some very significant intellectual heft in our team. And, we're a very small team as well. So to be honest, we don't really do hierarchy. Everybody knows each other. We have a stand-up every Monday morning that everybody comes to. I know all the staff names. I don't tend to think about their what level they're at, but I'm delighted with, we've got some fantastic capability.
It's a bit like Cheers, where everyone knows your name. Mr. Hernandez?
So, in other words, no, there are no whakapapa Māori people high enough in their organisation.
Yeah.
Mentioning, otherwise she would have been able to say, yes, this person does this role, this person does this.
But give me credit, I know all my staff by their first names.
It's all right because people in the ministry have worked with Māori in their former jobs, so it's all okay.
Yeah. But here's the other thing we just need to catch too. She just said, yes, we need to develop our capacity to engage with communities like Māori businesses. We are small, right? So they're not very mighty, are they? They're too small. They've got a lot of bureaucracy. Māori part of that? The Māori part of the top group? No, they're not. They can't even name a Māori technician that's working for them.
I wonder if the cleaner's Māori, or is the cleaner not even part of the 100 staff member count?
Drew, she was talking about the cleaners. I get it now. Talking about the cleaners and the caterers and the people who carry stuff in and out of the building. It's got great talent, great diversity.
Do we try for one more?
She hurts. Oh.
Considering we've got 9 minutes before we've got a hard shut-off.
We don't have a hard shut-off.
Well, we kept
going till just after 10 o'clock last night.
I think the chat has a hard shut-off. I think they really,
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we need them to be chatting about us on the other show.
All right, yes, let's keep going, see what else we can get through.
Thank you.
Supplementary, and then we go to primary from Dr. Deborah Russell.
Thank you. Just to be explicit and sub off the line of questioning that the previous members had, what would you characterize as your senior leadership team, and what proportion of that are Māori?
I'm very happy to get back to the. I would have to go.
Okay, they'll come back to that. Right. Okay, I'm going to go to a primary for the Honourable Dr. Deborah Russell.
Thank you. I just want to dig into the appropriations, so the report on last year's appropriations. There's a couple of questions I want to raise in there. So in that report, under the leadership of the vote regulation, departmental output expenses, they were budgeted for 2,120 and they ended up at, 2,110, they ended up at 2,334 million, something like that. Just a little bit above where you went to be, but it was a couple, in the context, it was about 10% above. What was going on there that meant you just spent a little bit outside your appropriation in the year to 30 June 24? Yeah.
I mean, we started on the 1st of May with 6 people and a couple of desks. In terms of building the ministry, there was an estimate made. We made a little bit more progress than we expected, and that was great news. And Treasury were very comfortable with that, as have our auditors been.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that explanation. And I just want to go again to It's the report on performance measures to June 24 and the assessment of performance. And in terms of the Minister's satisfaction with the Policy Advice Service, bit of a low score, unfortunately. I appreciate you're new, but you said you're aiming for getting an average score of 4 out of 5 or better, but you actually came at 3.39. What did you do to lift that? I presume you've lifted it since.
Well, I think there's 2 scores. So just want to be clear, there's a score for the policy quality advice that's independently reviewed, and then there's a score for ministerial satisfaction. We did set our scores as a pretty ambitious target. So 4 out of 5 whenever you're first starting and you have no established relationship, no established work programme is pretty significant. I can tell you that our ministerial satisfaction score has trended upwards. So it has actually risen every 6 months we do it? Is it every quarter? Every quarter. It's risen every quarter. So it is on the uptick. But on the other quality of policy advice, we did hit our targets. So we are seen as providing good quality advice as per the standards for the public service.
Okay, thank you. Just carrying on with appropriations, I'm looking at the supplementary estimates of appropriation for the year to this year, I suppose. So it's on page 770 of Treasury's report. Really look into yourself. And you were budgeted for the year 2024-25, you were budgeted $16 million. But there was a supplementary estimate there, 2 ones. One was capital expenditure of 356,000. I mean, I shouldn't say just whatever, but whatever. But because I appreciate you had to build up the ministry. But then in that leadership of the regulatory quality system appropriation, you spent an extra 936,000. So in the context of a budget of 16 million, that's actually quite significant.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, we came in very close to our 16 million. I mean, for those of you who have obviously been in government before, you know that trying to land on the exact dollar figure is like trying to land a 747 on a dime. Again, the auditors are very comfortable, have said we've got good financial controls, and we worked with Treasury in terms of forecasting where we would be at the end of the year, and then making sure we had all the appropriate paperwork to support that.
Okay, it's actually a 5% or 6% overspend. And I appreciate, if you're doing your audit, something over 10% is significant, something under 5 is not, and there's a judgment in between. It does seem like quite a big overspend.
Right, I would say it's not, but I'll hand to my colleague here who can give you some more detail.
Sure. So the 16,936 million that you're referring to is made up of our original $16 million budget that was appropriated at the establishment of the ministry. And then in addition to that, a carry forward of the 23-24 underspend of $436,000 that was appropriately authorised. And also an initiative to bring forward 500,000 from out years to cover the cost of an urgent Waitangi Tribunal claim for the Regulatory Standards Bill. So that was all done within appropriate processes and approved.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions?
I've got another primary, but that can go to the bottom of the list.
Okay, this side of the table.
Yep, those are all primaries.
So let me get this straight. They had a budget that was less than $1 million. Then they ended up overspending and still got a score less than 4 out of 5, right? Apparently there are 2 scores and their scores have trended upwards. But I don't know how much they've trended upwards by. She didn't state any of that. And they still have no Māori advisors or technicians. They've probably got Māori cleaners. I imagine they're very talented, but very intellectual.
Well, it might not be Māori. There might be Pacific Islander as well. I mean, Cobra is only up the road.
Yeah, so... oh, fuck. These answers, man, I can't.
It's all right. I mean, put it this way. We won't have to worry about more for tonight.
Yeah. Well, I was actually going to ask our audience to chime in. Do you want us to continue? We've got about 20 minutes of this left. I'm quite fine to not continue with that.
Same here. I've got a coffee cut opener tomorrow morning.
Yes. Like, anyone who needs to duck out is welcome to duck out. If anyone wants me to continue, I'm happy to just let it run through.
Gee, you're nice.
Myself for anyone in the audience who wants me to. It's the same thing I did last night. I did not fucking care about going over time because there was shit to cover. And we still didn't even make it into the second video. Yeah. But actually, okay, what I will do... Copy.
Yeah. So the moral of the story, guys, is please please do a submission. Please be a woke submission bot and submit against the regulatory standards bill, because this is all trash.
Yeah.
Seems to be that the regulatory standards ministry, or regulatory ministry of regulation, is all about just reinforcing Pākehā privilege and property rights.
Yeah.
Wow. Right. So yeah, for anyone who wants to catch the last of that committee, I've just thrown the
Video link into the chat. Thank you.
The URL in the chat with the timestamp. So that's where we've gotten to. If you want to,
Yeah.
I do not blame you if you don't want to keep watching.
Now, just before we go, merchandise.
Yes, a shirt. I need to buy another shirt.
Yes, you do.
And if you're very concerned about the quality, you ask Gary to go next door to inspect. Because Gary literally lives next door to the printer.
Gary personally expects every T-shirt that is ordered.
Thank you.
There's actually there's a sad story attached to that, because Print Mighty is now in the premises that was occupied by my brother's book business that went out of business last year.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Damn.
Oh, wow.
Just another victim of this government, a business that survived the global financial crisis, COVID.
So they've moved from being behind the building to now in front.
Yes, and a much better building, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
They got more space. They're all spread out. They were cramped up as anything around the back.
Yeah. No, it did feel a bit like you were like toppling over everyone.
Yeah. No, much improved now, but it's sad that the business that was there isn't there anymore. That was my part-time job.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So also for anyone interested, hold on. I've unmirrored my camera. I'm relearning where everything is. There. We have a QR code for our Give a Little, which will help Sam and I to fund the upcoming shows that we will be doing for the local body elections. Wrong way, that way. Yeah, I'm used to everything being backwards. Sorry, I've unmirrored my camera. You can also, if you're interested, I will jump back to this screen because it's right there. You can scan that QR code to become a panelist. If you want to join us in chatting about any of the shit that is currently happening in government.
Fantastic.
Sam will be back in the driver's seat tomorrow to take you through. What are we doing tomorrow, Sam?
We're doing what's it called? We're doing the estimates of vote labour market with the Honourable Brooke Van Velden, followed by estimates of vote health with the Honourable Simeon Brown.
That's
there are no pleasurable committees with these people around.
It's all pain.
It's all grind.
There really aren't. I went to the wrong tab. Give me just a moment. Also, guys, we are 10 subscribers away.
Oh, yes. If you didn't subscribe now. But yeah, we're 10 subscribers away from being able to apply for partnership, which means you can do a super chat.
I will do a dance when we get 500 subscribers.
Fair enough. All right, everybody, we will let you go for tonight. We'll catch you back here tomorrow, 7 o'clock.
For the Order Paper Podcast Scrutiny Week special.
Yes. All right, thanks for joining us, everybody. We will catch you next time. Ka kite anō.
Good night.
Cute.
Thank you for watching the Order Paper, your express ticket to the New Zealand House of Representatives. Every episode, we unravel the complex world of legislation, debate, and democracy. From bills to select committees, we've got it all covered. From our team of political commentators who will dissect and explain what's happened so you can remain up to date on what's happened in the Aotearoa, New Zealand Parliament. To support our channel, you can become a Patreon member at patreon.com/itsinthe-ballot. The Order Paper podcast is brought to you by It's in the Ballot Productions, live at 8 p.m. New Zealand Standard Time every